Is this topic just a bad excuse to talk more about the love of my life, my favorite NPC, the half-elf Pole? Yes, it is. But it's also a good way to introduce some new stories. What up, it's your boy, Cade the Crappy Bard, and I'm back with more hopeless romantic trash because I'm basically a rat who feasts on garbage and one type of garbage only. See, maybe I'm a hopeless romantic because of my history as a fangirl who always ends up shipping someone in the first episode, but that's besides the point. For the people that didn't watch my first video, I will put a link down in the description below so you have a bit more context for references, but here's a quick recap of what happened. On last week's episode of Dayful the Dumbass Fairy Bard, she arrived to the capital Jaja Way with a couple of unimportant hot boys, Hot Dad and Edgy Boy respectively. Still, however, she managed to fall in love with a non-magical loser named Pole, who just wanted to do his job and sleep. After some brief and, frankly, embarrassing flirting, some other non-important stuff happened. Will they ever stop pining for one another? Will Pole realize he deserves better? Or will Dayful continuously roll high seduction rolls he can't save against? Find out now on today's episode of Dayful the Dumbass Fairy Bard. Now, for comparison, D&D relationships are a lot like fanfic relationships if you've ever read one. You got your slow burns, your enemies to friends to lovers, your soulmates, etc. And it's all about what 100,000 word fanfic you're gonna pregame till 3 a.m., even though you have school the next morning. From a DM's perspective, D&D relationships are hell, oh my god! You have to look your players dead in the eye as they say some nasty, horny BS to you, and you have to respond back in the same way because they rolled a nat 20 on seduction. It's embarrassing and it's awkward to roleplay their significant other or spouse, and giving them kisses is so uncomfortable, but you're trying to stay in character. At some point, you just lose your sense of pride and it doesn't faze you anymore. Thankfully for my DM, when dirty things happen, we just fade to black. But as a player, you want that action, you want that relationship. Especially if you're a bard, I mean, come on, am I right, ladies, or am I right? Relationships can be an interesting and intriguing part of the story, and they come in all shapes and sizes, like I said. They can be between the players themselves, players with NPCs, or they can even come from backstories. I will be using my own character and my own stories to explain examples, so don't worry if you get lost or don't understand. Backstory relationships are important. In the terms of Dayful, she was actually married before she met Pole. Her husband was also an elf and a scholar who lived in the Etherean Empire, same as Pole. And while she never truly loved him and felt pressured to be with him by her human father, he was her only true friend who actually cared about her. Then he disappeared and was declared missing in action after becoming a guard, which caused her to go crazy and wander mindlessly for 20 years. Relationships like this add to the trauma and motivations of characters. It affects their future interactions. For that reason, I can't see Dayful marrying Pole until maybe 20 to 60 years into their relationship. But, for the sake of the actual gameplay, I'll probably speed that up a little bit, if they ever get there. She sees too much of her husband in him. I could see her maybe having kids before then, because she has nothing against that, but Pole has problems involving unsteady family life growing up, and his parents not being married when they had him. Despite these problems, however, loving each other means working it out, and I'm sure they will be able to. Jeez, isn't dating so hard in real life and D&D? Almost as bad as that time Dayful had to save Pole from a coma she inflicted, but that's for another day. In conclusion, past relationships are as important as present relationships. But what about present relationships? Why are they important? Because it gives players a goal, something that excites them. Some of the comments on my first video are an example of this. I hope you all don't mind me throwing these up on the screen, but your stories were all too good and too fun to read and not to share with everyone else. I love when people tell me about their romances. Feel free to keep sharing them in the comments. But relationships keep us interested. Even if it's just a one-time fling, flirting with the barkeep or tavernman keeps things spicy, and is part of unwinding between missions. A little toss in the hay might also lead to some less than savory paths, such as an unwarranted pregnancy, or perhaps a character looting a sleeping NPC. But either way, it adds spice that the DM can use later. While one-time flings are funny, especially if the interaction involves a kinky escort or a cocky virgin. Get it? Cocky virgin. I'm such a funny bard. Long-term relationships happen much more frequently. Long-term relationships are a reason so many people love shows like Critical Role, after all. Critical Role is especially good at slow burns, pacing relationships very slowly to the point you might watch a 4-hour episode just to get the smallest morsel of Ford and Jester, or Jester and Beau action. Basically, we like it when relationships feel real, and characters really connect with one another in real time. In my DM's campaign, our paladin Halion, aka Hot Dad, came to the capital of the Etherean Empire, Zhao to warn the Empress of an unknown approaching evil. When that evil hit in the form of a Titan Blue Dragon, we had to evacuate the city with the Empress, which I'll talk more about later. But, in the course of getting together enough forces to take back Zhao, Halion and the Empress slowly began to fall in love. What started as just little flirtations led to a partnership between the two. He became the general to her Empress, as well as her lover of sorts, but that had to take a back seat when the dragon came along, leading to an intense but silent attraction to one another. Now to my real fans, you'll know Torvald as the edgy boy and Jaza from the last episode. Torvald is a fiend pack warlock, and Jaza is a celestial imp who can read tarot cards, and mothers the party a little bit. Jaza and Torvald are sort of an example of this too. Torvald is asexual, and we've never seen either of them really express attraction to one another, but on many occasions they would have rather died for each other than live without each other. She cares for him more than anyone else in the world, and for that reason, they live together and do everything together, caring for each other in their own, very colorful way. See, even if you're not familiar with these characters from my previous videos, you can probably still relate to them. Present relationships give players a reason to fight, and they fall on a very large spectrum. So if you're a DM, the moral of the story is, let people engage with your NPCs, and if a relationship develops, encourage it. You can use it later, and they get what they want. Relationships also help the story feel more real, because oftentimes we players get genuinely invested in them, and we can all understand what it's like to love, lust, or even care for a person. Dating in D&D can be seen as a taboo, or even annoying, but you can't deny that it can lead to some very interesting stories. After all, if my DM wasn't an amazing storyteller, you wouldn't be watching this video right now. There would be no story for me to tell. So engage your players, and maybe they'll tell stories about your campaigns. Thank you all for sticking around to the end of the video, where now I can officially say that I have a Patreon. If you can't commit to monthly payments, of course, you can always donate to my coffee, link in the description, starting at $3. Please give me money, master. If you want to know more about any of the characters mentioned in this story, you can check out any of my other videos or my Instagram at CrackerJackBabe for additional art and stories. Also, I'm officially calling subscribers rats, and none of you get a vote in this. Happy rolling, rats!